Okay, right. Good morning and welcome to the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 8th of October 2025. I'm Councillor Ian Massey and I'm the convener of this committee. I'll now introduce you to the top table. From my far left is Councillor Grant Stewart, my vice convener, Miss Audrey Brown, Democratic Service Support Officer, Mr Jeff Fogg, Legal Manager, and on my right is Mr Christian Smith, Development Management and Building Standards Service Manager, Mr Sean Panton, Team Leader, Major Applications and Enforcement, and Mr Paul Williamson, Team Leader, Local Applications. I'd like to take this opportunity to, on behalf of the Planning Committee and officers, to extend a warm welcome to Leanne Measy and Emmanuel Borg, who are joining us from the Planning Authority of Malta. Leanne and Emmanuel are shadowing the Council's major and enforcement team this week as part of the Erasmus project. Perth and Kinross Council were selected for this project as we are considered to be an excellent national example of a planning authority, a statement which I fully agree with. Their trip is fully funded by the Erasmus and therefore has no financial cost to Perth and Kinross Council. We are delighted to be hosting the Malta Planning Authority this week and hope that they take home lots of positives from their experience with us and the Scottish planning system. So once again, a warm welcome from all members of the committee to Leanne and Emmanuel. As this is a hybrid meeting, members joining virtually are reminded that if you leave the meeting during consideration of any application, you are unable to participate or vote on that item when you return to the meeting. This also means that if a member loses their internet connection during consideration of any item, they should not vote on that item. Please advise the clerk via the meeting chat that you are leaving the meeting, or if you have lost the connection and are therefore unable to vote on that item. And whilst we are operating as a hybrid meeting today, can I remind councillors and officers to use the chat box to attract my attention, Q for questions, C for comment. I will now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies and attendance of those in the chambers and online. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Morning, members. We have one apology today from Councillor Waters and we have Councillor Drysdale substituting. We have one member online. If he can confirm his attendance, Councillor James.
Morning, Audrey. Yes, I'm here, thanks.
Thank you. All other members are present in the chambers.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Any members have any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Item 3, the minute of the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 3rd of September 2025. Can we agree the content of the minute? Thank you. Deputations. We do have deputations today on item 532. Can I ask the committee if we agree to hear the deputations? And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the deputations and members of the public watching today. Your request to speak has been granted. You will be called to the lectern as we reach the relevant item on the agenda and be invited to make your deputations by the Vice Convener, followed by a period of time for questions from members. It is requested that the content of your deputation is kept relevant to the planning consideration in relation to the item of business being discussed. Please also ensure that when answering questions, your response remains relevant and direct to the questions asked. Move on to item 5, applications for determination. This is for a section 37 consultation for an overhead line tie-in at Feddle Hill Wood Braco. And to introduce the report is Mr Panton.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, councillors. So as stated, the first item on the agenda today is for an overhead line tie-in near Braco. Members should be advised that Perth and Kinross Council are not the determining authority for this application, and instead the determining authority is the Scottish Government's Energy Consents Unit, otherwise known as the ECU. Perth and Kinross Council are therefore a consultee only, and we are recommending to the committee that we respond to the ECU with no objection, subject to conditional control. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Before I do, I would point out that there is a small error in the report before you. That being in that paragraph 23 says that it is not an EIA development. I can confirm that this application is an EIA development, as is confirmed elsewhere in the report. So on the screen now, we can see the location of the site, which is in a rural location, approximately 4.5 kilometres west of Braco. The nearest residential property is approximately 1 kilometre to the southeast of the proposed development. Next slide, please. We now have the proposed site plan. You can see here the towers that are affected. The proposal will result in 2 temporary towers being constructed, the construction of a new permanent tower, the dismantling of a redundant tower, and the creation of temporary access routes to each of the towers. In total, 980 metres of the existing Bewley to Denny overhead line will be temporarily diverted. This application is required in order to facilitate the proposed construction of the new Braco substation, which will be at full council for consideration in due course. Next slide, please. We now have a typical proposed elevation for the pylons. As you can see, this is relatively standard for this nature of development. I will now show committee photographs taken on my site visit only last month. Next slide, please. So here we can see the first of the existing pylons under question. This photograph is taken looking in a southwesterly direction. Next image, please. Again, we are looking in a southwesterly direction with the affected pylons to the right of the image. The woodland you can see to the left and centre of this image is the approximate location of the proposed substation. As stated already, this substation is subject to a separate planning application and will be at full council for consideration in due course. The application will be at full council rather than Planning and Placemaking Committee, as it constitutes a national development. Next image, please. This penultimate photograph shows the affected pylons again, this time looking in the northeasterly direction. And next image, please. This final photograph shows approximately where the temporary towers will be created. Your attention is drawn towards the existing track in this location. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Panton. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? No questions for officers? Where are they? Oh, right, okay. Bailey Williamson.
Thank you. I noticed from your pictures, Sean, that there's a number of Sitka spruce either side of the proposed power lines, or the gantries at least, and I understand they're going to be taken down as part of the application and replaced with a combination of conifers and native deciduous trees. My concern is that there is a potential, because it's on peat soil, there will be actually very shallow rooted and prone to falling over, especially in high winds. And I'm just wondering if that's been incorporated into the environmental plans.
Thanks, Bailey Williamson. So yes, it has been incorporated. So as part of the application, there was a landscape and habitat management plan, and within that it contains how the trees will be left to grow and the like. So condition 10, which is recommended, will ensure that that's adhered to.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. Not particularly about the current proposal, but you did mention twice about the substation coming to full council. Is that the case, that it's coming to full council rather than to the Planning and Placemaking Committee?
That's correct, Councillor Allen. So it's going to full council because it is defined under National Planning Framework 4 as a national development, and our scheme of delegation requires national developments to go to full council rather than this committee. So it will be going to full council.
Have we any idea when that might be?
At this moment in time, we are aiming for December, although it could be into the beginning of next year, but it's likely to be with you by the end of the year.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Then can I ask for a motion? And I see Councillor Cuthbert, you've jumped ahead of everybody else.
I just thought I'd worry this morning just in case I do something silly, but I approve the paper. I think it's fine, and I'm happy to recommend that we approve it.
And I will second that. Can I ask if there is an amendment? No amendment. Can I ask if committee has any comment on the report? No comment. Okay, thank you very much. That means that the council will send this back to the ECU with no objections to the proposal. Thank you. Move swiftly on to the major applications. The first major application is for a Section 42 application to amend Condition 4, Sustainable Urban Drainage System of permission of 23/02134/IPM for the Two Sisters Group, George Street, Cooper Angus. And to introduce the report is Mr. Panton.
Thank you, Convener. So yes, as stated, the next application on the agenda today is a Section 42 application to amend a single condition which was attached to the in-principle permission for the mixed-use development at the Two Sisters site in Cooper Angus. The proposal is to amend Condition 4 regarding drainage. The applicant is requesting to delete a single sentence within the condition as per paragraphs 12 and 13 of the reports before you. The rest of the condition will remain the same. Consultation with the Council's flood team and SEPA was undertaken, neither of which have any objection to the removal of this part of the condition. It is therefore felt that the proposed condition will remain suitable to control the sustainable drainage of the site, and as such we are recommending approval of the application today. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further and to remind members of what was approved under the in-principle permission back in August 2024. So on the screen we can see the location of the site, which is to the southwest of Cooper Angus. The site extends to approximately 10 hectares. Next slide, please. We now have an extract from the adopted Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan 2, where you can see that the site is allocated as an employment site known as E32. Next slide, please. We now have a satellite image of the existing site showing it in greater detail. As you can see, the northeastern section of the site accommodates the existing Two Sisters facility, and the area to the southwest is currently arable farmland. Next slide, please. We now have the indicative plan, which was shown with the in-principle application. Here you can see how the site is intended to be developed. Next slide, please. We now have a selection of site photographs. The top 4 images show the site when viewed from the A94, and the bottom 2 images are on the site itself. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the indicative site plan for reference.
Thank you again, Mr. Panton. Can I ask if committee have any questions for officers? Bailey Williamson.
Yeah, Convener, it's about the rivers that are coming through, or should I say the burns that are coming through Cooper Angus. And I understand that is the floodwater from them not allowed to use the SUD scheme, or are they going to be kept separate in the event of a flood?
So because this is an in-principle application, we don't have that detailing yet, but the suggestion is that when the application comes forward, there will be underground tanks within the parking area, which will control all the ingress water. So that's why they're looking at deleting it from the condition. But because this is just an in-principle application, we don't have the full details of what they're proposing just yet. But the flood team and SEPA are satisfied that the condition that's still recommended will suitably be able to control all elements of flooding.
So therefore, Sean, will there be capacity to capture excessive floodwater that comes through Cooper Angus and it won't be diverted somewhere else?
Correct, yes. So as was assessed as part of the actual in-principle application, there was a flood risk assessment which had to demonstrate all of that, and flooding and SEPA were satisfied that this could all be accommodated within the site.
Thank you. Any further question? No further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Convener. I'm satisfied with the contents of the report and the presentation from Mr. Panton to recommend this for approval as set out in our plans. This This is an important part of our food infrastructure in Perthshire and throughout Scotland. It's creating employment and providing food. So I think it's really important that we focus on this. So I'm happy to approve.
Please, Convener Stewart, do you wish to second that, or have you a motion for yourself?
I'll just second Bailey McLaren's motion.
Thank you. Do we have an amendment? No amendment. Can I ask members if they've got any comment on the report? No comment. Therefore, planning permission is granted. Thank you. Okay, we've switched on again. The next application is for the erection of 4 dwelling houses and change to boundary treatment plots 54 and 55. Approval of matters specified in conditions of 02//01482/IPM and its land north of the A912 at Oudenarde, Bridgeverne, Perth. And once again, to introduce the report is Mr. Panton.
Thank you, Convener. So the final major application on the agenda today is for the erection of 4 dwelling houses at Oudenarde, Bridgeverne for GS Brown Construction Limited. The proposal will result in an increase of 2 units from what has already been approved. However, we are satisfied that the amendments sought are reasonable and are therefore recommending approval today. Members should note that there are no public objections to the proposed development, and the application is only before the committee as it constitutes a major development. I'll now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. So firstly, we have the location of the site, which is to the east of Bridgeverne and the M90 and north of the A912. The site forms part of the Oudenarde Village Master Plan, much of which has already been consented. Next slide, please. We now have the proposed site plan. As already advised, this proposal will replace 2 units with 4 units. The units will be semi-detached 2-bedroom bungalows. You can see here that the units are consistent with the rest of this phase of the development and respect the existing building lines and layout. Next slide, please. We now have the proposed elevations and floor plans for all 4 units. The design and materials used for these are consistent to the rest of the development and as such will not appear out of place. Next slide, please. 2 of the proposed units will have garages. Shown now are the floor plans and elevations of these garages. Again, materials are consistent to the wider scheme. Next slide, please. The application also seeks to change some of the boundary treatments to incorporate a feature wall. This is welcomed as it will provide a more attractive edge to the development. A section of the wall is now shown. Next slide, please. I'll now take members through a series of recent photographs. This first photograph shows some of the units which have already been constructed. The circled red area shows the proposed wall. Please note that none of these units are occupied yet. Next image, please. We now look into the development itself. You can see here that the currently built section of the site. The bungalows shown are similar to that proposed, and as such, the proposed changes of house types will not appear out of place. Next image, please. This photograph now shows a section of the site where the changes of house types are proposed, denoted by the orange arrow. You can also make out the completed and occupied units in the distance at Alexander Drive. Next image, please. This final photograph is taken looking back at the site from the approximate location of where the changes of house types are proposed. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference.
Thank you again. Can I ask members if they have got any questions for officers? No questions. Okay then, can I ask for a motion? Councillor James.
Thought I'd get in for something today, Convener. I think it's not going to make a difference to the site, and it's nice to actually be able to change the market offering. So I don't have any issues with it. and happy to go with the paper as is. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. And Councillor Cuthbert, do you wish to second?
Happy to second the motion.
Thank you very much. Can I ask if there is any amendment? No amendment. Does committee have any comment on the report? No comment, therefore planning permission is therefore granted. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to the local applications, and the first local application is for the installation of a barrier at Burley Sands Car Park, Kinross. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, convener. The first local application today relates to the installation of a barrier to the car park at Burley Sands near the northern shores of Loch Leven, approximately 2 kilometres east of Kinross. The barrier is proposed by Nature Scott to operate the car park following unprecedented levels of use for parking, and in particular for camping by larger motorhomes, which restrict levels of wider parking by other smaller vehicles. Furthermore, there have been high levels of human waste and chemical disposal on the site as well. The barrier would give Nature Scott greater control over the types of vehicles using the facility, with multiple alternative sites for larger vehicles still being available in the wider area. In this instance, the application has been referred to committee in light of an objection from the Milne Thorpe and Orwell Community Council. As outlined in paragraph 18 of the report, the Community Council consider that the barrier could restrict access for those with disabilities and may increase illegal car parking out with the car park. As outlined in the report and in respect of the relevant policies of the development plan, from the perspective of placemaking, visual amenity and landscape, the barrier set against the backdrop of woodland so as not to have a detrimental impact. Furthermore, it's set back from the road edge so as not to impact upon road safety. The issue of illegal parking is not a material consideration, and the recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions listed in the report, and I will now take members through a short presentation to outline the proposals further. First, we see the aerial plan, which shows the site outlined in red, located just off the C495 east of Kinross and southeast of Milne Thorpe. Next slide, please. Next, we see the site layout plan showing the car park layout and the position of the proposed barrier. While small, on the top right, we see an image of the style of barrier. Next slide, please. This slide shows the elevations of the yellow barrier, which would be 2.1 metres in height to the underside and 6 metres in width over the bell mouth. We'll now see a selection of site photos taken recently by the case officer. Next slide, please. This image shows the entrance to the car park from just west of the junction. The barrier would be set 5 metres back from the carriageway edge. Next slide, please. This image shows the view south into the car park from the junction and shows the backdrop of trees against which the barrier would be seen. Next slide, please. And this last image shows the view into the car park and the view back towards Kinross and the C495 from slightly to the east of the junction. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation, and I now return to the site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Can I ask committee if they've got any questions for officers? And I'll start the question. The barrier is going to be set 5 metres back. How much warning will vehicles have that this barrier is in place before they actually reach it?
Obviously, the coloration of the barrier itself being bright yellow in the context should alert users. Obviously, it will be predominantly open during the day. This is for other periods, etc., that they do see fit to have it closed. So, it should have sufficient visibility, and 5 metres allows most cars certainly to pull off part of the road and stop before the barrier itself. So roads were happy with the positioning and placement of the barrier.
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, convener. Apologies in advance if this may not be overly pertinent to the application, but in terms of maintenance vehicles accessing the area, how will that be administered? Because this is to preclude larger vehicles, but there will be points when larger vehicles may be required. And I presume the applicants maybe thought that through.
Yes, Billy McLaren, the top of the barrier isn't a fixed weld, so it too can open. So as and when larger vehicles do require access, it's a coded entry that would free that up.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Yeah, just following up on that. So there will be a code both on the top bar and also the gate at the bottom.
That's correct.
Okay. Councillor Braun, you have two questions. Are they both related or?
They're pretty much linked together. And
Okay.
Clarification here. I just want to clarify that the lower barrier will be open during the day. Is that correct? And then just closed at night?
As far as I understand, it's certainly the lower portion is to be kept open during the day, and then the top one would be closed. And then, you know, if other vehicles do require access, it can be arranged.
And the other point was just carrying on from what was mentioned before about access with the upper barrier. You mentioned there'd be a code, but I know that one of the points raised by the Community Council was the concerns about disabled vehicles being able to get through. And I know you said there's a code, but I know that many disabled people have a tag they can use when they go to external facilities that they can use to actually open the door. Could that be incorporated into it? I mean, we can't condition it, obviously, but is that a possibility to mention it to Nature Scott or the owners?
Apologies, it would be for Nature Scott to consider whether or not they deemed that to be appropriate. You know, we could certainly make them aware that those were the comments from committee, but there's no obligation for them to do it.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thanks, convener. I think this is a great idea, and ironically from Nature Scott, as the problem they're trying to resolve is pretty much across the whole of Perth and Kinross. We're suffering in Strathday. So my question is, whilst there's a gate barrier for the road, which makes it sort of idiot proof, if you make something idiot proof, you get a better quality of idiot. So are there any other measures to stop people getting around through the sides of the gate? I know this is stopping on the road, but I noticed in the photographs there that there are gaps between trees. So will other measures be incorporated along with this gate? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Certainly, as it stands, we are assessing the proposal that's been tabled to us. Obviously, Nature Scott consider that this is the solution that works for them, and nothing else has been tabled at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. Paul, just really a quick question about the 2.1 metre height of that barrier. What vehicles would that preclude?
To avoid sounding silly, any vehicles over 2.1 wouldn't be able.
That in itself was the answer I was probably going to expect, but what I should have done is elaborated somewhat. Is it going to stop a works van from going in, for instance?
Certainly, works vans could potentially be at a height that could be face difficulties. Most private cars would sit within the 2.1. Obviously, MPVs, larger vehicles, could find it more of a challenge.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions, then can I ask for a motion? Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I think this is a good idea by Nature Scott, if I'm honest, because it is a rising problem with as we call it, dirty camping, and this is will help their cause. I think measures are in place to allow for disabled vehicles if required, if access is required. So I'm happy to go with the recommendation as lined out by Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, do you wish to second?
Yep, happy to second.
Thank you. Can I ask the committee have any comment? Bailey Williamson, you have a comment?
You know, after amendments first.
It's because everything's running so smoothly, and can I ask if there's any amendment? No amendment. Bailey Williamson, your comment.
Yeah, thank you for that. My comment is that I fear that this should be part of a wider conversation we have about how we manage tourism across Perth and Kinross more generally. I think too often people are dealing with issues such as this in isolation or in silos. And as I say, I believe that there needs to be a much wider conversation about some of the negative impacts of tourism across the board. My fear is that we could potentially lose our right to roam unless it's dealt with or managed more properly.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Yeah, my comment's similar. I see this as being a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut. In principle, the biggest problem in this car park, it's very well used. A lot of people use it for walking to Kinross and back and so on. So it's a popular car park. The problem actually is more to do with the wild camping beside the loch, where they're having bonfires and there's all sorts of problems down there. So I think Nature Scott are trying to prevent that happening. But I'm a bit concerned that it will actually impact on the usage of the car park by people just coming to walk. In terms of where we're at, I think the land access regulations need to be looked at and how they can be enforced, because at the moment they're a bit too loose and there isn't powers available to the authorities to move people on or actually police it properly, as far as I can see. Councillor Robertson has raised this with the Scottish Government, and basically we've been told there's no plans to change them, but I think we should be asking at some point for a review.
Thank you for that. There was no amendment, so therefore planning permission is therefore granted. Thank you. Move swiftly on to the next application, the final local application, which is for a residential development in principle at land 80 metres east of Newlands House, 2 Dunsinnan Road, Wolf Hill. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Convener. The next and final local application for consideration today relates to an application for planning permission in principle for a site located within the settlement boundary of Wolf Hill, just off Dunsinnan Road. The site lies to the southeast of the settlement, and the applicant has submitted an indicative plan showing a layout of 7 residential plots, all fronting towards Dunsinnan Road. This application has been referred to committee in light of the receipt of 38 letters of objection to the proposals. The reasons for the objections are outlined in paragraph 32 of the report on page 101 of the papers, and in most part relate to the principle of the development, visual impact, impacts on infrastructure, inadequate transportation and road safety, flooding, lack of critical assessments, the belief that the settlement boundary is a mistake, development plan compliance, and loss of prime agricultural land, among some others. It is accepted, and when it comes to MPF 4 policy relating to housing provision, Policy 16 outlines that allocated sites in the LDP will be supported. While this site is located in the settlement boundary, it is not specifically allocated for a specific number of dwellings, as it's considered to be an opportunity for small-scale infill development. Instead, under current LDP policy, it's considered against Policy 17 residential areas. This was also the case for a site located at the western edge of the settlement beyond Fraser Avenue, where 14 dwellings were approved in December of last year. Notwithstanding Policy 16 of MPF 4 sets out other criteria where residential development can be acceptable. Clarification was sought from the applicant, the Perth Gildry, as to the potential delivery timescales. As this is for planning permission in principle, they identified it could be marketed later this year for likely purchase by a small or medium-sized builder or as individual plots. In respect of the issue of prime agricultural land, the response from the local development plan team outlined that the cumulative loss of prime agricultural land was considered when drawing the settlement boundary for Wolf Hill. In respect of technical matters, any subsequent application for matters specified in conditions or full planning permission would require to assess the associated impacts on infrastructure and consider drainage and SUDs, as well as other matters such as biodiversity. These, along with developer contribution requirements, including towards affordable housing, can all be adequately controlled by planning condition. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions listed in the report. I'll now take members through a short presentation to outline the proposals further. First, we see the location of Wolf Hill, which, as members should know, is located at a midpoint of the A93 to the west and the A94 to the east, approximately 6.5 kilometres due north of Scone. Next slide, please. Next, we see an aerial extract which shows the location of the site towards the south of Wolf Hill, accessed off Dunsinane Road. Next slide, please. Next, we see a zoomed-in aerial extract which shows the site more clearly between two existing developed parts of the settlement. As you will see, the field is in agricultural use, however, it is located within the defined settlement boundary. Next slide, please. Next, we see the indicative layout. This shows the potential for 7 plots with the drainage ditch and existing hedge retained as part of the proposals to the north. We will now see a selection of site photos taken recently by the case officer. Next slide, please. This image shows the view eastwards along Dunsinane Road on the left, with the site located in the field. The image on the right shows the existing bus shelter on Old Church Road, a short distance to the west. Next slide, please. The next image shows the view westwards from Dunsinane Road, which shows the general scale and character of dwellings in the vicinity. The image on the right shows the view even further eastwards near the junction with Castle Road. Next slide, please. These next images show the existing hedge and associated drainage ditch from the west and east respectively. Next slide, please. These next images show the wider site from the field access from Caroline Place to the west, and the right photo showing Caroline Place itself and a dwelling to the south. Next slide, please. This last image shows a street view extract from the junction of Burnham Wood Way, Dunsinane Road and Caroline Place. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation and I leave you with the site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Can I first call on Dr. Taylor? Dr. Taylor is an objector to the application. Dr. Taylor, you're aware that you've got 5 minutes for your deputation, and when you're ready to go, I'll start the clock.
Thank you, Convener, for this opportunity to speak directly to the committee. It's greatly appreciated. I don't have planning jargon, and I suspect that this will not fit in with everything else you'll talk about today. I have to declare an interest. My house is one of the prettier ones opposite the proposed site, so I am directly affected. I'm also the acting chairman of Wolf Hill 2038. I'll come back to that at the end. And it's my privilege today to speak on behalf of the community of Wolf Hill. We oppose application 0927 and will continue to do so, even if this is a bit of a forlorn hope. We've realised from the start this is David versus Goliath, but we're still here. You, should not be here now determining this application. There would have been no need, because the community, had it been consulted, would have participated in finding an agreed solution and avoiding objection. The application that you will consider is not classed as a major development, even though it proposes an increase of 10% in the number of dwellings in the village. Not being a major application removes the condition for prior community consultation. So the applicant, a friendly and charitable organisation, their words not mine, did not consult. They didn't have to, so they just didn't, despite having considered this site apparently for 3 years. Meaningful consultation might have produced another solution, given the chance for a community buyout, identified other less contentious sites for development, but the applicant decided not to do it. If you look through your papers, you'll find passing reference to consultation. Sending your agent to a community council meeting 5 weeks after the closing date for comments is not consultation. The last time I looked, it was 2025, not 1625. We all have expectations of transparency and openness, and charitable and friendly organisations have guidance to work by. One of these is the equivalent of the medical profession's do no harm principle. It states that charities should not cause disbenefit to others whilst pursuing their aims. I think you can see from the objections that the community identifies major disbenefits with this application. So, are these 7 houses a priority amongst the hundreds being erected in Perth and Kinross? No, they're not. Is there any sort of forward plan for the growth of Wolf Hill that this application furthers? No, there is not. This is a random development. The applicant proposes 7 plots now, with many more to come around the village, and will, and I quote, release the plots individually and in drip format to maximise profitability of each plot. This is not placemaking. This is not planning, because there's clearly no plan. And we've got no idea why the Guildry is so keen on pursuing it. This application, and the one that will follow, and we're back here next month for another one further along the road, will severely impact on the village main street, which is its main amenity. You saw the aspect, if you've got one impression, it would be of openness. Its open southerly aspect means it's used as a promenade. People walk, they walk with their families, their buggies and their dogs, they chat and they cycle, the things that we are all now encouraged to do. This application, and the one to come, will remove a major chunk of that amenity that makes Wolf Hill different. And it will introduce yet more traffic, because you cannot live in Wolf Hill without at least one car. Key to determining this application, and we've heard it mentioned already, is the settlement boundary and the relationship of national planning guidance and local development plans. I've said I do not have the specialist knowledge to unpick this, but I understand that there is some tension between national guidance and local plans. We believe that the settlement boundary for Wolf Hill is wrongly delineated and certainly bears no relationship to the situation on the ground. This is good quality agricultural land, never previously in the old system zoned for housing. We believe that there is a danger of setting the wrong precedent in this case. Setting the precedent that it is implicit that land within a settlement boundary should be available for development is dangerous. Sorry, I'll conclude. All open space would otherwise be under threat. We need to have the presumption that it's not explicit to build within a settlement boundary. Let me end by stating as strongly as I can that we are against this development. That we are not against development, but we're very much against this development. A truly planned approach is needed, one that acknowledges people's lives, surroundings, and community. Okay. Thank you. We will be producing a local place plan for Wolf Hill over the next few months, and I hope you'll allow us to do that by refusing this application. Thank you.
Dr. Taylor, you indicated earlier that you're willing to take questions from members. Members, can I repeat our convener's request earlier that we keep to the facts? This is questions about the land use. So if you have any questions, please populate the chat function. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you for your representation, Dr. Taylor. You mentioned the effect of the immunity. Could you just expand on that a little bit, how you feel it would be effective for the village?
Wolf Hill is a planned village. It was planned in the 1830s. And I won't go over the history, it's in the objections, you can read that. There is a common that runs through the centre of the village, which is quite small. So there's a little area of open space. But the highest open, most open and sunniest spot in the village is the main road, which is open on its southern side. People naturally gravitate there. It's a kilometre long from the old church in the west to Dunsinnan Estate in the east. That's where people go of an evening to walk their dogs in the morning, take their families out for a stroll. It connects with the nationals, one of the core paths, and you can cycle down the adjacent farm track. So it gets a lot of traffic. All of that is balanced against the fact that it is the main road through the village, and so it gets a lot of car traffic as well. But the openness that was so apparent in those photographs is what makes that stretch so unusual.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thank you, Dr. Taylor, as well. Can you just give me an idea? You mentioned in your deputation there about the land being prime agricultural land. What kind of crops have you seen grown on there?
When I moved to the village originally, it was actually pasture. It wasn't arable. But with the advent of heavier farm machinery, bigger ploughs, more powerful tractors, the very heavy land around Wolf Hill has actually been turned into arable. So we have had wheat, we have had oilseed rape, we have had potatoes, I believe, if I remember correctly. But the what you might call the standard arable crops that are all around us actually come out of that piece of land as well.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you, Dr. Taylor, for your presentation. You kind of get cut off towards the end of your conversation there, and you were talking about the tension between NFP 4.4 and LDP 2, and particularly as regards the settlement boundary issue. Could you just go into more detail? And that seems to be one of the main bases of your objection. Thanks.
I hate to say this, but I might have to refer you back to your planners for the detail of all of that. But my understanding is that when the government brought in NPG4, there were outstanding local plans that haven't been renewed yet, and I think the one for this area is actually one of that. So in the past you might have had land zoned for housing, now you have a settlement boundary. The settlement boundary sort of appeared, nobody in Wolf Hill knew it had been withdrawn, that's probably redrawn, that's probably our fault, but we didn't pick up on it. But my point is that if you draw an arbitrary line and say everything inside that line is implicitly open for development, it means that potentially every piece of open space is up for grabs. I think to say that it's not explicit that it's open for development is a much safer thing to say, because that enables some flexibility when you have to make decisions on planning that are perhaps a wee contentious or have other aspects to them that are not directly related to whether something complies with NPG 3.5, 6 and 5 and 7 and 8 and 9 and all those other things. So that's really the point I was trying to make in very broad terms, and I'm afraid I don't have the detail to back that up.
No, that's okay. I'll be asking the same questions of the officers, but thanks for your understanding.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you again to both. In your deputation, you mentioned that you think you're going to be coming back next month for another objection. Now, to categorise why I'm asking the question, I've got a question for the officers, and I'm just trying to see if you've got the answer as to why I might be asking that question. Can you tell me what that further objection is, please?
You're going to have to explain, because this is about this application, and this question should be about this application. Other applications don't apply.
It will lead to a question for the officers. I can ask the officers. I don't need to ask Dr. Taylor. It's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Braun.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It's part of, just a follow-on question. We talked about the field. Just wanted to clarify, it is actively used now for agriculture.
Dr. Taylor, there's no further questions. You're free to go.
Thank you, and apologies for the overrun.
Can I call on Mr. Dimmock, agent for the application? Mr. Dimmock, you'll be aware you've got 5 minutes. And when you're feeling comfortable, I'll start the clock.
Thank you, Convener. Your officer report before you is comprehensive. A housing proposal within the Wolf Hill settlement boundary is before you, and the recommendation is for approval. So I'll keep this presentation short, but provide you with some background to the application and its submission. Why has it been submitted? The applicants are not developers. They're a local charity who have a long association with Perth and its immediate surroundings. In a responsible way, they've looked at their land assets to see where they might generate funds to continue their good works. Should planning permission be secured here, the applicants would market the land for sale, as it has done with other land within the village. In fact, many of those residents opposing this application have benefited from land that the Gildry has sold within Wolf Hill, within its settlement boundary. The intention is to market the land soon, following a planning consent, and you will know that small housing sites within Perthshire are in short supply. The target market here would be for small builders and self-builders. The application is in principle only, and importantly, many of the technical matters that are of concern to residents can be addressed at that detailed planning stage. So why have we submitted the layout drawing that's before you? Well, the development plan requires us to show that sites within settlement boundaries can be developed in an efficient way and in a way that has some respect to its surroundings. You've heard that this land is in agricultural use. Historically, it did accommodate 3 houses and large gardens. In a housing emergency, such a low density approach to redevelopment would not be an efficient use of this land and would not be reflected of the pattern of housing and placemaking in Wolf Hill today. So the site clearly has the capacity to accommodate more than 3 dwellings, but that layout plan is indicative only, and it will be at the detailed planning stage for your officers to determine an appropriate approach to development of the site. Concern has been expressed about the lack of community engagement. You've heard that. This is not a major application, and given the relatively small scale of proposal and its siting within a settlement boundary, it was not envisaged that the proposal would generate such local interest. That said, the applicants were noted the volume of representations and the misleading nature of many of the comments and concerns raised. So I was tasked with meeting the Community Council at their local meeting, which was in Wolf Hill after the reset, and that's why it was 5 weeks after, you've heard, 5 weeks after the application was submitted. I was able to answer and respond to many of the questions that were raised by residents. Since then, we've also met members of the organising members of the local place plan. The place plan group was established after the planning application was submitted. That place plan is at an early stage, but the Guildry, the applicants, have made clear their willingness to engage with the community in the production of that place plan. And indeed, Mr. Taylor's confirmed that there will be a consultee to that plan, which is welcomed. Finally, I draw your attention to the consultation response of your development plans team. Now, they've commented on this planning application, and specifically in relation to 3 points that I'd like to raise with you. One is the spatial strategy of Local Development Plan 2, how that evolved. The second point is to do with settlement boundaries. And the third point, this tension or this aspiration for local living, which is now advanced through MPF 4. I'm going to quote here, your development plans team consider the proposal to be consistent with the spatial strategy of LDB2, which permits development beyond the tiered settlements outlined in the former TAY plan. Settlement boundaries were defined to facilitate development, and we take the view that these constitute an important part of the spatial strategy. They go on to say that the proposed site is not specifically allocated for housing in LDB2, but was kept within the settlement boundary as white land to provide opportunity for small-scale infill development in Wolf Hill. And finally, in relation to local living, you'll be familiar with the concept that is advanced now through MPF 4. Wolf Hill is a location with very few local amenities, but the development team have taken a balanced approach, and they've advised that we do not interpret the local living policy as imposing a blanket restriction on development in areas with limited access to services. Such an approach would hinder the sustainable growth across many rural settlements in Perth and Kinross. Okay. Thank you, Convener and Vice Convener. This proposal can deliver housing within the settlement on a suitable infill site. It clearly accords to the development plan, and as you all know, planning application decisions are required to accord with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And I would urge your members to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dimmock. You said earlier that you're willing to take questions from members. And we've got a question in already. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you for your presentation this morning, sir. You've explained and you've responded to the previous deputation's comments about a lack of prior consultation on this, and I fully understand that a prior consultation was not legally required. However, would your clients, would the Guildry concede that in hindsight it was, shall we say, naive to expect that a small local community would not have strong views one way or the other on a development of 7 units in a prominent location, and in hindsight, would it not have been prudent to have a prior consultation, notwithstanding it was not legally required? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In hindsight, I totally agree with you. It's a point that I made when I addressed the Community Council in August. Had we known the level of unease that there might be locally to change within the village, yes, I would have been recommending that to the Guildry, that we undertake some form of community consultation. But as you know, hindsight, they're only good decisions that you recognise after the event. So I'll agree with you. We didn't have an obligation to go down the road of community consultation. That settlement boundary was defined in 2019. There's a comment in the development plans team consultation that there were no issues raised by the local community when the settlement boundary was defined in 2019. So there was nothing there really to suggest that this was a location where community consultation would be advisable. And in relation to the point about 7 units, we're obliged under the development plan to demonstrate how we can deliver an efficient use of land. It may be that the best placemaking solution would be less than 7 units. I would advise you not to get hung up on the numbers here, because this is an in principle application only.
Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
You, Vice Convener, and thank you for your deputation. Coming back to that last point there about the number of units, when I look at the plan which is above you, the units themselves seem to be particularly generous. And you did point out that this is only an outline planning permission and we shouldn't get hung up on the numbers. Is there a possibility that you'd be looking for more than 7 units?
Realistically, I don't think your planners would be supportive of a placemaking solution that involved more than 7. I may be wrong. We haven't looked at the design in any level of detail because the intention was to secure an in principle application and then move to market.
And just to clarify something else that you said, you suggested that there were 3 houses on that site previously.
Sorry, that's not a suggestion, that's a fact. If you look at the historic maps, and it is included in the planning report that I submitted as part of the application, and there were 3 cottages along that road, and all of that application site that you can see before you, all of that land within the settlement boundary was gardened to those 3 cottages.
Convener Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Dimmock, for your presentation. I've got a question about the delivery of affordable housing element. What's your intention and how are you going to deliver the affordable housing element of the application?
You will know, Convener, that one of the recommended conditions on the officer report is that the affordable housing policy will be applied to the further application that would follow any in principle permission. So if the numbers increased, the threshold for delivering affordable housing would kick in. As I've mentioned, the intention is not for the Guildry to develop this site. The intention would be for the Guildry to market the site with a planning permission.
There appears to be no further questions, Mr. Dimmock. Thank you for your time. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you. Can I ask the committee have any questions for officers? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Convener. You can probably guess what it is, the same question as I addressed it to Dr. Taylor. I kind of do understand myself, but can you explain the kind of tensions as regards the kind of settlement boundary and the LDP and that type of background? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I think the agent actually answered it quite well as well in cross-referring to the response from the council's own LDP team. I think that the conflict as it's perceived is in respect to the specific wording of policy 16, which stipulates that sites should be allocated. The stance of Perth and Kinross when it comes to allocating sites is not to specifically allocate small infill sites with numbers as a principle. It's only larger, more strategic releases that tend to have formal allocations. That's not to say that this isn't going to follow the strategy that's within the development plan. It does. It seeks to focus development on an existing settlement, and policy 17 of the LDP sets out the stipulations for being of a suitable density, design, scale, etc. with the local environs. So as far as we are concerned in the LDP team, we do believe that there isn't a conflict there and that we can proceed. The other aspect just to advise members of is that I've taken a look back to the previous LDP as well from 2014, and the land in question was also included within the settlement boundary at that point. So it's been a continual allocation within the settlement.
So just a quick follow-up, convener. So it's really their argument is over the interpretation really of the should word in that policy, right? Okay, thanks.
Mr. Fogg would like to expand on that.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, convener. Yeah, just to reiterate what Paul Williams has said in his answer there. This application site does lie within the settlement boundary of Wolf Hill, and that is because when we've heard the 2014 LTP and the 2019 LTP was adopted by the council was taking a view that this was white land where infill development would be consistent with the plan. I think what Dr. Taylor, beg pardon, was saying was contrary to established practice. There is a presumption that infill development within a settlement boundary is what the plan was envisaging when it provided for appropriate expansion opportunities of Wolf Hill. And it would be quite hard for the council now, having taken that decision in adopting the development plan, to then step back from that as a principle.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I'm looking at the LDP2 and I'm slightly confused. My question breaks down into two parts. First of all, this section of land, it is white land, is marked up as Newland House. And in the sort of description of Wolf Hill, the settlement summary, it says the settlement boundary has been drawn to accommodate planning permission to the west of the settlement. No housing allocations have been identified for this settlement. So I'm confused. I think, why would it be called Newland House if...
I think first and foremost, that's just obviously OS extract and how it titles properties. Sometimes it's not directly over the property itself. So I can only assume that that's the reason for that. The fact that it doesn't make reference to this land, in most part, LDPs won't specifically reference every part of white land that might be appropriate for development, but within policy 17 it does stipulate the criteria that I've referred Councillor Harvey to as well, as to how acceptable forms of development might come forward and what would be appropriate for the residential character of the area.
Yeah, just maybe to add to that, I think what it's referring to is a change in the settlement boundary from the previous plan to this plan. So as we mentioned earlier, the site which has Newland House written on it, which is a property adjacent, which is drawn from OS, so it shouldn't be seen to refer to that site in itself. My understanding is that the site on the west that was mentioned was incorporated in 2019. So again, if you refer to policy 17 and also policy 14, it gives more context. So I wouldn't rely on every piece of detail within the settlement statement. That's just a summary of some of the situations or issues that arose in the production of LDP2 in 2019.
Yeah, just to say that I went looking to see if there was a listed house called Newland House and whether it was actually in that location. I couldn't find it anywhere, so I was confused by this. I presume the residents have also been confused by it. I don't know.
There's certainly no listed property there called Newland's House, but Newland's House is the one directly to the west.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you. So, thank you, convener. Just a quick question before I go into my real question is, on the plan there, we see that it's an infill site, and I get that. I see that there's a site just to the left of the plan. Is that also considered for planning coming ahead?
In respect to you're obviously saying site to the left, the proposed location plan in the top right shows obviously the application site boundary here. We do have a separate application under consideration for land which is on the western side of Caroline Place at the corner with Old Church Road. That application is not ready to come forward. There's further information being sought on that, but as has been highlighted already, that's a separate consideration.
Okay, thank you. So going forward, can you tell me how many houses are currently in Wolf Hill?
Well, as had been alluded to by Dr. Taylor, he was obviously highlighting the numbers that this would be a 10% addition. So obviously it seems to be, well, he's just shouted 90 there. But
okay, so we've got 90 houses. We've got 14 already approved on the western side. We've got 7 here being requested today, and we've got another application coming in for further housing. I'm slightly concerned about pressures on the local primary school, healthcare, etc. Can you comment on that, please?
yeah, certainly as alluded to within the report, and having consulted with the Developer Contributions Officer, any subsequent application that comes forward has to align and accord with the Council's supplementary guidance on developer contributions at that point in time, and only at that point in time can we confirm exactly what those contributions would be necessary towards, whether it be education, transport, and then we can look as to whether or not there's any other infrastructure improvements that would be required for the likes of roads or investing in public transport infrastructure and upgrades of bus stops, etc. So we would look at that point in time.
And my final point anyway is the application is for 7 houses, and my question to the applicant, sorry,
It's an application in principle for housing.
Application in principle for, okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions, therefore I'll put forward a motion myself. And my motion is to approve the application. I recognise the concerns of the local residents, but we are currently facing a housing emergency, and it's vital that we explore suitable opportunities to deliver housing, high quality homes, especially in rural areas like Wolf Hill. This application represents a small scale development which lies within the existing settlement boundary, and aligns with National Planning Framework 4 and our own PKC local development plan. It also, in my mind, offers the potential to positively contribute to the local housing supply, including local affordable housing. I do accept the representations received which highlighted valid concerns about infrastructure, biodiversity, visual impact and road safety. These matters are important, but will be fully addressed at the detailed planning stage. The current application is for planning permission in principle only, and no final decision has been made regarding layout, design or number of houses. And conditions have been proposed to ensure that future application must demonstrate compliance with environmental, infrastructure and placemaking standards. And while it's important that we continue to listen to what and work with the community to address their concerns, this proposal offers us a responsible and policy compliant opportunity to support the rural housing needs. I support the officer's recommendation and believe this is a balanced and responsible step forward. Do I have a seconder? Councillor James, are you seconding my motion?
Yes, convener, I am. and I agree with what you've just said as well. This is an in principle. You know, are we happy that perhaps there's a development? We're not specifying what, and our planners are happy with everything that's there. And we've already heard that this site historically has had buildings on it, so I don't have any issue with it. My only concern really, convener, and I don't know if we can condition this, is that while it's in principle for 7, that they've stated 7, I wouldn't like to see any a bigger development than 7 put in place. I don't know if we can incorporate that.
That would come with the actual planning, full application, so we'd only know that when it comes forward, and it would be up to the planners to decide if that was too many houses or if they could put more in. So I don't think that's a condition that we could put in, but I'll stand corrected if Mr. Fogg says so.
I think you're right, convener. That's a matter for a later stage.
Okay.
Okay, and can I ask for amendment? And then we have an amendment from Councillor Braun.
Yep, thanks, convener. And I appreciate from the start that this is an in principle application. But I think the important thing here is that if it's approved, you effectively agree that the land can be developed. There is a principle for development on that piece of land, irrespective of what the final application is. I've been to this this part of the world on a couple of occasions for site visits, not for this one, but for others. So I know where this is. We've mentioned already there's other development going on in the area, and it was mentioned, I think Mr. Dimmick actually said it, that we need to respect the village itself. And comes a time when you have to respect the amenity of the village and the aesthetic of it. And my concern here is that this development will change the amenity of that village in that part of the world. It will change the aesthetic of how it looks. And the other concern I have is it comes down to the land itself. It does mention in the report, paragraph, I'm not sure which one it is. It's mentioned here that this is, in paragraph 53, this is the class 2 prime agricultural land. Much of the prime agricultural land we come across is 3 or 3.1. This is class 2. It's one of the best that you can get. And I appreciate that LDP 50 talks about allowing development within settlements, but when you read it, it says outside settlements it's small scale developments, and it does say that small scale is 1. Now I appreciate the spirit of LDP 50 may not apply into this equation, but it's there. However, it does say we have, and it does mention here that MPF 4 policy 5B does say that agricultural land cannot be developed, prime agricultural land cannot be developed, and this doesn't meet any of the exceptions of that. And obviously MPF 4 does supersede LDP LDP 2. So coming together, and I do note, of course, that we mentioned that it's only 0.9 hectare, but it is still 0.9 hectare of prime agricultural land class 2 in an area where we are already seeing much prime agricultural land under threat from other developments, which are exceptions. So to sum up, allow Mr. Fogg to comment, my reasons are that this contravenes policy 1A, that the development does not contribute positively to the surrounding build. Policy 1B, and there's a respect to topography and view of the area, and also contravenes policy NPF for policy 5B, in as much that this is prime agricultural land of a class 2 quality. And therefore shouldn't be sacrificed in this instance. That pretty much sums up. There's a couple of things I have here, but I think they're the prime ones which should be considered. Thank you. I'm not sure if I have a seconder, of course.
That's what I was waiting to ask for, because there's no point in Mr. Fogg intervening if we do not have a seconder. So can I ask if somebody was willing to second? Okay, yeah, if you feel that way.
Convener, just before you ask for a seconder, I think I have to caution both Councillor Braun and the committee that there's great doubt as to the competency of any of these grounds when they're considered against the circumstances of this case. Councillor Braun's founding on background policies 1A and B, because he's saying that the reasons he gave. But I have to repeat, this is an in-principle application where you've got no detail before you. You can't make a judgment on the appropriateness or otherwise of the design. In your earlier remarks, you said that you believe that the development of the site would affect the aesthetic of the building, of the village. But I think in saying that, you have to start from the position that this lies within the settlement of Wolf Hill. It wasn't identified as public open space such that it should be preserved in the future or the planned period as open space. Therefore, the council was accepting the possibility of development coming forward, and that does mean change. So I really don't see that you can say that ground is really a tenable basis. Separately, you've opposed it because it's agricultural land, and it is agricultural land. But again, at the risk of repeating, well, I will repeat myself, the council made a decision as to what the settlement boundary of Wolf Hill should be, and in so doing, knowing that this was agricultural land at that time, when they defined the settlement boundary, they were accepting that it may be lost to allow appropriate infill development. And I don't think it's tenable, therefore, to resist a proposal otherwise in accordance with plan, because it would entail the loss of agricultural land. So, so summing all that together, I don't think that would be a tenable position to defend were the committee to decide to refuse it. And in the event it was challenged on appeal, I think there would be very, very slender prospects of avoiding even an award of expenses on the basis of it being an unreasonable decision for the committee to have reached, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Mr. Fogg. Could we have about 5-minute recess, convener, just to clarify this a little bit more? Is that possible?
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Now, I do notice that Councillor Allen, you put second amendment in it. I've taken that to mean that you had a second amendment to put in, but you're seconding the amendment. Right. Okay, thank you. So we do have a seconder, Mr. Councillor Braun. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess. We've had a good discussion in the room. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Braun right now. Thank you.
Thanks, convener. Well, as you say, we've had a long discussion, and obviously following on from Mr. Fogg's initial comments when I put my motion forward. Given what we've discussed, reluctantly, I think I'll have to withdraw the amendment. I think we're struggling a little bit here. I am concerned about the loss of prime agricultural land. There's no doubt about that, particularly in this part of the world. But given that it's an in-principle application and based on advice and discussion, I think it would be very difficult to defend my amendment. So I'm going to have to withdraw it, I'm afraid. Reluctantly, but I have.
Yeah, thank you for that. Can I ask if there is any other amendment? No other amendment. Do committee have any comment on the report? Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, convener. I'm after listening to the deputation and reading the papers, I am content, as you know, as you hear me talk a lot about prime agricultural land. This is in this area identified as within a settlement boundary, and I am fully supportive of bringing more housing to rural areas. There is a rural housing crisis as well as a housing crisis, but particularly in rural areas as well. And that is recognised also by national stakeholders such as Scottish Land Estates and NFU. This is an in-principle application. I look forward to seeing the detail when it comes forward. I heard the mention of self-build plots. That's exciting. So I see that this, with our officers' eye to detail, when the detailed application comes through, can very much enhance the village of Wolf Hill. And I look forward to those proposals coming forward.
Thank you. Any further comment? No further comment. Therefore, planning permission is granted. Thank you. Right, we now move on to the plans, and the first plan is for a residential development and associated infrastructure at land 100 metres north of Clayton Road, Birdbank, Bridge of Erne. Do members have any comments on that report? Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, constituents have asked me to raise the following issues about the Bridge of Erne. First of all, ask you to consider the provision of health services, the plan for construction traffic, flooding prevention, education provision, the fact that this land is not in the local development plan 2, and water and sewage provision.
Okay, is that you?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Any further comment? Further comment? Okay. The second plan is for a resident development and associated infrastructure at allocated site H13, land 120 metres west of Burr Cottage, St Martin's Road, Balbeggie. Do we have any comments on the report? Okay, no comment on that report. Third one and the final application. The plan is for a residential development and associated infrastructure at the British Car Auctions, Kinross. Do we have any comments on that report? Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I understand that the red line for this plan covers the potential for creating vehicular access to the car park at Lochleven. Taking nothing for granted here, can I ask officers to look at ensuring that access to and from the car park through the application site is a must? Thanks.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. I've been made aware through my colleague, Councillor Willie Robertson, that there's been a local Kinross action plan event, and it very much highlighted a local voice requesting no more housing in Kinross. So the local community do not have an appetite for housing on this site. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, convener. My comments are similar to those, but there's 4 of them. First of all, the route through the site. My understanding is there is a public right of way that goes through the site. It was diverted and changed into a foot access around the outside of the site to facilitate the British Car Auctions safety. But the route of that used to run straight through the site. There was a vehicular access down to the pier. Basically, I'm looking for that to be looked at and verified, and as Councillor Drysdale has said, make that as a condition that that's put back in place. The second thing, which is similar to what's been said, Kinross's population has more than doubled since the 1970s, and that is bringing huge pressure on infrastructure. In the last, in this current plan, the number of houses that have been allocated to Kinross have already been built, and there's still 3.5 years to go in the local plan. And there is huge concerns within Kinross about the infrastructure and whether there is actually a need for the housing. If you think about it, the local development plan comes forward with plans for infrastructure along with housing. And what we're seeing is that the housing element's being delivered, but it's now putting pressure on all the infrastructure. So I would like officers to look at the infrastructure in terms of how that's going to work going forward. The next thing is the availability of employment land. In principle, this is employment land historically. It was zoned as white land. Nobody seems to know why it was zoned as white land and wasn't protected for employment. I fully accept that as it's white land, it could be developed and therefore the application is valid. But what I would ask is just what impact does that have on employment land in Kinross-shire? But looking at the overall picture, Kinross West is now all the units are sold. There's virtually no available employment land. And this is one of the biggest sites within Kinross-shire for employment. And now we're going to put yet more housing on it. So if that can be looked at. And the final question is that I've struggled to find a consent notice for the demolition of the building, BCA site. And I'm wondering, was that actually consented or did it just happen and the building fell down? And if that can be looked at as part of the overall review of what's happening there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? No further comment. Well, that was the last thing on the agenda today. So thank you to the committee, officers and members of the public for watching today. Thank you.